Hello and welcome to the HBR Talk 31 After Show, Social Justice Academics. And I've got two articles for you tonight. I'm going to get rid of this. I've got this stupid thing that pops up in the window for subscriptions. But I've got two articles for you tonight. One of them is NYC College offering Feminist Economics course. And the other one is WSU offering class on social construction of Western science. So that's what's on our plate tonight. They're both kind of short articles, so I decided both of them would be good. They're both by the same writer, and see if I can remember how to pronounce her name, because somebody told me it was Araxinen, but Tori Araxinen, and I might have it wrong anyway. Actually writes a lot of good stuff, and I'm following her on Twitter, and so I sometimes get notified of this when I actually look at my Twitter feed. But here we go. I'll start with the first one. New York, I'm guessing it's New York City College, NYC College offering Feminist Economics course. And it just blew my mind when I heard Feminist Economics, because I thought economics is math, and math is math no matter what. And if there's a feminist version of it, it's got to be wrong, because if it's different from the norm, it's not using the facts. So this article starts with, bullet points. The new school, a self-described progressive university in New York City, is offering a course this semester on feminist economics, a field created by feminist socialists to combat capitalism.
Sorry. I'm
sorry.
sorry.
It's okay. This is what we do. According to the course description, feminist economics is a way of radically conceptualizing and reorienting the study of economics in ways that are more transformative for women. And I read that, and that's the reason why I picked this article. Transformative economics. The only thing I thought of...
Transformative economics is taking men's money and giving it to women.
Yeah, transformative economics. The first thing I thought of is transformative economics has to basically mean somebody else paying for your shit. The only other thing I could think of was that check game that women play that then they end up overdrawn, and they get mad and blame the bank, where you write a check for money that you don't have in the bank yet, but you're going to get paid.
The check goes through like a day earlier than you thought it
expected.
Would.
Yeah. And there were a lot of women when they started using telecheck at grocery stores and stuff. There were a lot of women that ended up overdrawn because their check went through immediately, and they would get mad at the cashier, even though it says right on the register. It says right there. There's a little sign right there next to the telecheck machine that it's going to go through immediately. If you sign the check and you hand it over to the cashier, and you don't have money in the bank to cover it, it's going to bounce immediately. But and then if you have a bounce check fee, to have a bounce check fee, you're now overdrawn, and women would get mad and abuse the cashier. Transformative economics for women. It must shape itself around me and my needs and my sensibilities, and it's somebody else's fault, somebody else's problem, and somebody else's responsibility. And it actually turned out to be somewhat accurate. Here we have this happy, joyful woman reading about triangles and percentage points and arrows and a globe and all that shit behind her. The New School of Social Research, a graduate school in Lower Manhattan, is currently offering a course dedicated to exploring economics through a feminist lens. Feminist Economics is a small seminar currently taught by Sheba. I'm thinking this is just Tiani. I don't think you pronounce the J, but it might be Tijani. An assistant professor of international affairs at the New School, whose research agenda focus on how various international economic policies impact women and men differently. As feminist socialists, we must organize a practice which addresses both the struggle against patriarchy and the struggle against capitalism. by paying to go to school and buying
Barf.
school books and
Barf.
yeah.
Barf.
Feminist socialist.
Socialist feminist struggle
I wanna go
against
back to-
patriarchy and capitalism. Barf.
Yeah.
I want to go back to me and Karen's argument.
Capital Archy, I know.
Bondage fucking shit. That's what
And
I want.
I want to talk about how Karen is wrong and is also smelly.
I want to talk about how Allison is wrong and is also so very wrong.
Yeah, but we're not
Well,
going
we
to do
can
that.
We can make this into Allison Wrong Bondage Feminist Economics class.
This is actually kind of fits into this.
Oh,
I have a story.
Who
I
has a
don't think
story?
Karen likes
Go on.
economics.
Continue, Hannah.
Okay,
We hate
you. Have
you.
to let Hannah finish.
You guys asked for it. You love it and you know it. Students are learning about...
I was not asking for it. I was not asking for it. I did not ask for this. I am not wearing a short skirt. I did not put my butt in your face.
You're wearing headphones.
All right. You got me there.
Students are learning about the gender wage gap, how women and men tend to pursue different career paths. The horror! The impact...
Oh, at least they're actually talking about that.
Yeah, I know.
How women and men tend to pursue different career paths that lead to the wage gap, as opposed to, like, women earn less for the exact same work.
The impact of globalization that women asked for on women, the social reproduction of wealth, and other economics topics, according to the course description. Rather than simply explaining how economic forces might hurt women, the description explains that feminist economics is a way of radically reconceptualizing and reorienting the study of economics in ways that are more transformative for women, which we already made fun of a lot. To do this, students are exploring feminist scholarship on... Oh gosh, I never pronounce this word right, because I always first read it as a episiotomy. Feminist scholarship on epistemology.
Epistemology, not episiotomy.
Well, you know, methodology and economic theory. Sometimes studying feminism feels like an episiotomy for everybody that knows what that is. And learning about how the assumption that everyone has free choice and rationality
for all
is
you
in
men
fact
out there,
gendered.
For all you men in the audience, an episiotomy is when they slice your vajayjay when the baby's head is crowning because they don't want you to tear, and usually it actually results in more tearing.
Yeah,
And
it's
also-
become something they don't do much anymore.
Oppressive. So oppressive.
Yeah, it used to
And
be.
Kapistan!
Yeah.
And Kapistan!
Yes, I'm here now.
It used to be done as a way to prevent C-sections in borderline cases where, you know, it's possible to prevent having to do a C-section. In cases where it's not possible, and they do an episiotomy and a natural childbirth anyway, what they end up with is a terrible experience that causes severe
like
bleeding and is not good.
It became routine to do an episiotomy,
For a
to
long
do
time.
a like 2 to 3 centimeter incision across the taint. You know what the taint is? It's the technical name is the perineum, but the taint to cunt, taint and asshole, the space in between, right? And what would often happen is the woman would have tearing all the way up her bum.
Yeah, it was bad.
And I had a friend who ended up having, she had the baby's head was lodged in the birth canal, and his shoulders were the thing that was like blocking her from giving birth. Because he had really broad linebacker shoulders. And she, so it was beyond the point where you could do a C-section. There was absolutely no way. So they did a suction birth and they did an episiotomy, and she tore, and she ended up with 68 stitches, 3 inches up her bumhole.
And this is I consider that comparable,
Look
quite
at it this
comparable.
way, though.
Yeah,
She was in a
consider
wheelchair
it-
for 5 days.
I consider
Look
that
at
quite
it this
comparable
way, though.
to.
The next time they already have the entrance for they already have the indications for to cut for the next baby.
Well,
Yeah,
no,
there you go. It's
no,
the dotted
actually,
line.
the next baby, I was there. I was there for the
Did
next
she
baby.
do
I was her
C-section
birthing
next
coach.
time?
No. She went into labor. She had bearing down pains. The doctor barely arrived in time. 2 pushes. The baby flew out like a fucking airplane.
Well, it's because
It was a different father, a different sized baby.
So the powers of the universe said, you know what? We already had the labor experience for the next 5 children with the first one, so every child she has after that has to be easy.
Actually, I don't know that was it, because it was
I
a
know.
different father with a different build, and so the baby had a completely different build, was
Well, that's
completely
the
different
thing.
shape, and didn't
But-
have those shoulders.
But in
Yeah.
any case, yeah, that experience that Karen described in graphic detail is what it's like for me every time I have to read
Very
feminist
graphic.
literature. It's
Epistemology.
mentally, that's what it feels like when I start reading feminist literature.
Oh,
It's like
God.
it's just like somebody is making a slice into a sensitive area and then letting it tear from there as you know, the
Right up your
pressure of a
butthole,
large
Hannah.
object. Yes, right up the
your
butthole.
butthole.
See, I didn't have to go through that because my son holed up in the rib cage and refused to come out, and they had to go in after him with a knife. So,
Ow.
Don't come over here!
no!
You're not my real mother!
Get the fuck out of there, you bastard!
Well, you know, and part of it was he
Or
was
I'll
big,
cut ya!
but he was big because he kind of put things off. He was almost 2 weeks late, so technically I gave birth to a 2-week-old baby, not a neonatal.
I gave
You know.
birth to a 27-day-old baby.
My friend did
27 days
My
late.
friend Anna.
And naturally, god damn it.
The 7 years in hell
know
guy,
that.
the good wife in the 7 years in hell story, her baby was a month old when he was born. So, yeah, he was big.
Yeah,
He was
it
over
ain't-
10 pounds. And this is, once again, this is what it's like. This is that pushing something
what
that
it's like
big
if
through that
you-
little hole. That's what it feels like to read feminist literature. So, on to
Mine
the-
was 11, 3.5. 11, 3.5. 11 pounds, 3.5 ounces.
Was this the shit poster, son?
Yes.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's
I'm not going to get through both of these
Decided
articles,
to
though.
troll
He's
you.
15 years old and he's 6'2".
Jeez. Yeah.
so he's almost my height.
Yeah, and
Well,
he's
thank goodness he
100
wasn't that big
he's
when he was born.
100 kilograms, which is 220 pounds.
So
About the
he's
same
like half
size
of
as
me.
my son.
Yeah,
But an inch
his
taller.
gym teacher his gym teacher just told him to try out for the football team, and he's not
Wow.
even athletic. And his gym teacher knows he's not athletic. His
Yeah.
gym teacher just knows he can stand in the middle of a field and like be a wall.
Yeah, it's something. Anybody that hits him is going to fall over.
Yeah, yeah.
He can be the tackling dummy, except that he can smart off to everybody while they're doing it.
Yeah, and mouth
but,
off to them about their
yeah.
mom.
That is what is really needed in feminist courses. Somebody who listens to people talk about radically reconceptualizing and reorienting the study of economics, and smarts off to them about their mom in response.
Yes.
Your mom writes
But,
bad checks. But yeah, so this
I've
is
learned in some contexts saying, "So tell me about your mom."
tell me
You can
about
get-
your
can-
mother.
Can get you in a lot of hot water.
It
Karen
really
understands.
can, Allison.
Karen
It
really
can.
understands.
I
Jeez.
was listening to you say that to somebody just recently. I can't remember who. And then there was like, and then the memories of all that proceeded afterwards are just blocked. They were so traumatic. I can't even bring them into my mind. Because
Anyway, how's your sex life?
Yeah. Jeez. Should we
my
scrap the
sex
articles?
life, I have way too much sex life. I have
Well,
more
it's
than
hard.
more
what's
than
the next
necessary.
article? I mean, it's going to just continue in this vein, right?
Yes.
Yeah, unless we get back to
Yeah,
the article.
keep reading. Keep
Okay.
reading.
Now
reading.
the
All right,
question
let's
is
go.
is it an unhappy marriage of Marxism and feminism? Because that's what they're talking about in the article. So they start out. This is the part that really blew my mind. To do this, students are exploring feminist scholarship on these things, right? And learning about how the assumption that everyone has free choice and rationality is in fact gendered. And so to back that up a little bit and unpack it, they just said that to understand feminist economics, feminists are learning that women are not rational.
And don't make choices.
Yeah, no, women are not rational, and they are slaves to their impulses.
And to their environment.
Somebody wrote this after looking at their credit card bill.
To be fair, it depends on your definition of rational.
That's true. Some people think it's rational to buy a pair of $80 shoes that you were not going to buy and spend $80 that you can't afford because the shoes are normally priced $160, so you're not spending $80, you're saving $80.
Yeah, my dad used to actually say, you know, he used to say, oh God help me again, you know, from when my wife and daughters come home and tell me how much they saved.
Yeah.
Right?
How much did you spend? How much did you spend?
Oh my God, we're ruined.
Yeah.
See, I like
we would be like, guess what, Dad? We saved like $800, and he'd be like,
oh God. Yeah.
Right? But I will say in my defense that I was the child that had the least money spent on her. I was the youngest. I got hand-me-downs.
That's how you save money.
And I was tall compared to almost everything that was available in women's and young women's fashion. Like every single, I once went shopping at West Edmonton Mall, the world's largest shopping mall, and went into every store and found one pair of pants that was long enough, that was only long enough until the first time I washed them.
Oh, I hate that.
Right? So essentially, I rarely bought clothes. I rarely. So when I wanted pants, I would make pants. I would sew them.
Yeah.
So I wasn't. You don't frivolously. Oh, I just happened to. I had 5 minutes, and you know, I had a few extra dollars, so I
spent them.
Spent 15 hours making myself a pair of pants. Yeah, that doesn't happen, right? So, so essentially, that was my shtick, and I am not the purchaser in my house. The purchaser in my house of frivolous items, there are two. One is my boyfriend, who is like, I feel like I really want to go somewhere. Let's go to Best Buy and see if there's anything I can buy. Or let's go to the store and I'll buy myself a necessary item of clothing. And I'm like, what item of clothing do you need? And he's like, I don't know yet. And I'm like, how do you know you need it? And he's like, I just want to get out of the house. Let's go. And and then he drags me around the store and I complain the whole time. And
yeah. I see. I'm the person. I'm like, I research everything, right? So I had a friend that shopping was her life. She loved to go shop. We didn't have to necessarily buy things when we went shopping, but she did a lot. She bought a lot of things that, you know, like not every time we went, but yeah, she spent a lot more than I did. But we'd go places and she'd try stuff on and I'd try stuff on, and she'd go up there with bags, you know, or a cart full of stuff to the counter to buy it. And we'd leave the store and she'd have bags of stuff and she'd be like, didn't you buy anything? Like, no, but when I need a new dress, I know exactly what I'm going to be looking for. I want one that's like that one that I tried on last, or that one that I tried on first. Well, why don't you buy it now? I don't need it now. You know, and that used to drive her nuts. And then the other thing that I would do is, like, all of my friends weighed more than me, except for her. She was shorter than me, a lot shorter than me. And so I got hand-me-downs. And I would just pick and choose hand-me-downs that I liked, and I didn't buy clothes. I still, like, I barely ever buy anything that you know, aside from undergarments, because most of my hand-me-downs come from a boy, and boys wear their undergarments out, and I'm not really interested in wearing underwear that came from a boy or has, you know, space for parts I don't have in it. So I buy underwear. So I'm exciting there, and I buy the cheap cotton ordinary granny panty type underwear because it's cheap
Hanes.
and functional.
Hanes.
And it's not
a 5-pack for $9.
Yeah, and it's not gonna run up my ass because I hate that. And
Oh,
now they
God,
design underwear to
yes.
do it.
Yes.
But this difference, everyone has free choice and rationality. The idea that is gendered, like my friend that I would go shopping with could not understand how I could really, really like an article of clothing and then choose not to buy it on the basis of it's not necessary. And it blew her mind. But she'd be like, what didn't you like about it? Well, there was nothing I didn't like about it other than the fact that it was going to cost me money that I can use for something else until I need the dress. And by that time, I will have earned other money.
I just don't need it right now. And it's like,
and one of the differences was I was shopping with money that I got from my photography. I would go photograph sports for my local newspaper, and I would come home and I would stay up late at night processing film and printing pictures, and then my dad would drive me to the newspaper, and then when I got older it was just me. I would drive me to the newspaper and drop them off and then go to bed and get up in the morning for school. And she was shopping with her dad's credit card, so it didn't have the impact on her when she spent money. It wasn't something, she didn't put any work into, she wasn't spending her labor. She was spending something that she didn't even recognize as money. It was just a swipe of the card. And I had to hand over cash that I got when I cashed my check, that there was a limited amount of it. I saw it leave my hands. I knew how I had gotten it. And sometimes it was, I'm out photographing in the rain with my camera wrapped in plastic and a poncho on and wiping my glasses off with a Viva paper towel because it's the only one that doesn't scratch them, like every 30 seconds so I can see to focus the lens, which I'm also having to wipe off. And that's not something that I want to just drop frivolously on something that I don't need.
I think too, like one of the differences between me and my sisters is, they weren't really around for, the Friday nights when my parents, every Friday night they would sit down after dinner in the dark living room and go through their receipts and balance the checkbook. Right. Every couple of months, maybe 2-3 months, they would have Dave Saunders over to sit at the kitchen table with them and go over their investments and their retirement savings plans and all of that stuff, and discuss with them where to put the little bit of extra money that they had at the end of every month, right? Where do you want to put it? And he was from Manulife or Sun Life or something like that.
In the mattress. We're going to put it in the mattress.
Yeah, well, and I was there. I was there sitting at the table watching them do this, and my sisters weren't, right? And so I actually was kind of aware in a way that they weren't, of my parents' financial situation, right? And the fact that, they invest money, but it's not very much money that they have at the end of every month, and they diligently put it away in some kind of interest earning mutual fund or something like that.
Right.
And they look after their finances absolutely diligently and balance their checkbook and work as a team to do that. And all of those things. Right. And my sisters weren't really around for that. And I was. And so I had an appreciation for the gravity of money and finances, and exactly what people spend money on, and the fact that you don't really like spending money on frivolous stuff is just pointless and stupid, and you really need to sock some money away, or do what you can to save, or do what you can to reduce your expenses and maximize your savings and all of those things, right? So that was really you know, so even when I was spending my parents' money, I was responsible with it.
Right. I had something similar. I didn't so much watch my parents balance the checkbook and all of that, but I did get to hear the discussions on it and everything. And the other end of it was I earned my first dollar when I was, I think, 10. My parents, I went with my parents to a wedding they were photographing because the babysitter bailed on us. And it was somebody that was close to our family anyway. And they were like, well, just bring the kids to the wedding. Your kids are well behaved. And we knew that if we disrupted things, that we would be going home dressed like baboons, at least from waist to thigh. But in any case, we went, and I took my camera. And I imitated my parents. You know, I took pictures at the wedding and the reception and everything. And they got my pictures developed with theirs. They even had let me use the type of film they were using, the professional film they were using, and not, you know, just ordinary everyday film. And I had some pictures that turned out really great. And they actually used a couple of them in the wedding book. And so they paid me. And they explained why they were paying me. And, you know, I had just been doing it because by that time, photography was like breathing for me. And so it would have been weird for me to be there without my camera. But because part of their profit came from those pictures, they paid me for the pictures. And they said, you know, it's work when you produce something of value for another person and you get paid for it. And, so that was it. That was my first. It was more than $1, but my first dollar came from that. My first earning came from that. And I have been earning money and spending money that I earned and understanding the power of being able to earn your own money, and also understanding the labor that goes into it since I was 10 years old. And, you know, I did other things. I numbered pictures for them from about 11 years old on, because I got that taste of being able to earn money, and I decided I liked that. And but I also recognized, you know, everything I did, the little bit of work that I did, my dad did an entire job of that. It was part-time for him, but it was still, he had a much larger area of coverage. And he did that on top of a full-time teaching job, and also running the photo club. And for years he also ran the yearbook. And then our family also had the wedding and portrait business on top of the newspaper work that he did. So I knew my dad worked a lot. I knew he worked hard. I went to work with him. I went to work with him when he was at school. I was in school too. I went to work with him when he photographed sports. And you know, I started photographing weddings with them when I was in high school. And I knew my mom worked hard. I knew she was on city council. She was always involved in stuff. She was never like the typical stay-at-home mom. She was a community mom, and I couldn't just spend and spend and spend, because I knew that there was blood, sweat, and tears on every dollar. And it was the work that went into it that really made the value of it hit home. So I guess having free choice and rationality isn't so much gendered as it is based on whether or not you have that awareness of what it takes to get the money, and how limited it is, and what its purpose is. But this is not going to be taught to these students.
No.
And they're going to be taught that there are haves and there are have-nots, and the have-nots are disadvantaged, and the haves are to blame, and you can't help yourself, and women are irrational and slaves to their impulses, and it's men's fault, and men should take care of them for it. That's what this looks like.
One of the biggest changes that I noticed when I was growing up was, like, up until I was 10 years old, my mom stayed home. Right. And when my mom stayed home, we did not have store-bought bread in the house. She baked bread every day. You know, like She grew a garden. She canned and froze vegetables. You know, like it was absolutely like we essentially lived on a suburban farmstead.
Yeah, homestead.
Yeah, and so essentially, and she was the person who stained the siding, who repaired the fence, who like got up on the roof and checked after a windstorm whether there was a repair that needed to be done, right? She was the one who did all of those things because my dad was working from about 7 in the morning until when he left in the morning every morning to about 7 at night on a regular basis, sometimes later. And so it was essentially, and then we had this massive shift when I was just a little bit, I was toward the tail end of my 10th year. You know, almost 11, when my mom went back to work. She went to work for her cousin who owned a business. It was an specialty advertising company. And she went there to work there as sort of the Girl Friday. So she was the office manager, the bookkeeper. She would silk screen shirts and, you know, put logos on golf balls and hats and things like that. She could do everything, right? And she went to work there, and she was suddenly the income for the family went way up, but at the same time the responsibilities of the family of the kids in the family went way up. So all of a sudden we were expected to do more chores and all of that, and I hadn't, my oldest sister coached gymnastics and was the captain of the cheerleading squad for her high school at the time. And so she did not have the time to do any of these chores really. And my other sister, the middle sister, was a complete fuck up, really. She's only just started to sort her life out at age like 50. So sort things out to the point where she's like somewhat respectable and normal.
What is that, your room?
yeah, she's starting to clean up her room, but she's the member of the family who has two kids by two different men, one of whom was married to somebody else at the time that she got pregnant, right? Like she's just like a massive like, and she's
train wreck.
She's in a long-term relationship with a man that she's been with for the last 7 years, but they don't live together because they tried that and they can't do it without becoming violent with each other. Right? So, yeah, she's a complete freaking mess, hot mess. Okay. And and then there was me, right? And she has been a hot mess all her life. And then there was me. So I was the one who came home from school, got dinner started, put a chicken in the oven, peeled potatoes, right? Cleaned the kitchen, tied it up in the living room, washed dishes, right? All of that before my mom got home. And that was usually 3 to 4 nights a week. That was my job. And but at the same time, we had way more money, right? And that way more money mostly went to my parents socking money away for their retirement, right? And so I was sitting there watching them, you know, essentially go from paycheck to paycheck to having extra money and putting it away, right? And I have been the beneficiary of them putting money away. I have received gifts from my parents, you know, throughout the course of my adulthood. When they got a windfall or when they, you know, cashed in some bonds or something and they were like, okay, well, here's $10,000, right? $10,000 for each of our daughters, right? So, you know, like, it's not like I didn't benefit from that. And I think actually I benefited from it more than my sisters did in some ways, because there were more expectations placed on me at a younger age, so.
And those expectations make a big difference. And you know, when we were kids, there was a story they would read in school, The Little Red Hen. I don't know if you ever got that story in your school or not, but the
The
little,
little
red
red hen
yeah,
with the baking of the bread.
yeah, and she would gather the wheat and she would grind it into flour and she would uh, uh, gather the other ingredients and mix them up and make the bread and put it in the oven and get it out of the oven. And each time she would ask who was going to help her, and everybody would say, "Not I," "Not I," said the pig, "Not I," said the horse. But then at the end, everybody wanted to share the bread. And in the original story, the little red hen ate it all by herself because she'd picked the wheat all by herself. She'd ground the grain into flour all by herself, and on through the whole story. And the story had a couple of things in it. I mean, it talked about the different things that actually go into the stuff that we make and the stuff that we use, but the main thing was that the rewards for that labor belong to the person who performed the labor. They're going to get the opposite in this class. And it's kind of a shame, because I think a lot of us grew up with lessons of the little red hen from our own families, and I will bet you they don't read that story anymore. And in fact, I will bet you that story is probably banned from a lot of schools because it promotes capitalism.
Yeah.
But this one says, though a syllabus is not available, the course description does indicate the students will debate the 1979 essay, The Unhappy Marriage of Marxism and Feminism, which was written by the current president of the Institute for Women's Policy Research. That essay, which is foundational to the field of feminist economics, argues in favor of a movement that blends feminist approaches to gender with a socialist critique of the economic order, all in hopes of creating a more liberated society. And I'm not sure how...
By enslaving everyone.
Yeah, by enslaving... How liberated they're going to be if they have to rely on somebody else to provide for them.
You know what strikes me, though, is that, when you actually look at it, right? When you actually look at the situation for my parents, right? Because my dad was a mechanic. He was a blue-collar tradesman. That's what he was. Yeah. He had nothing when he married my mother, right? Like, he told me stories of his bachelorhood where, like, he drank away his paycheck 3 days before the next paycheck was going to come in, right? And he was living in a one-bedroom apartment with six men, okay? And all they had was a hot plate. Okay, and he would buy at the, those three, to last him those 3 days to the next paycheck, he would buy a loaf of bread, an onion, and a pound of lard. And he would use the hot plate he'd slice up the onion, he'd fry it in the pound of lard until the onions were just black, because he always really liked, dark onions, right? And then he would let it harden and he would spread it on the bread. And that's what he would eat for 3 days until his next paycheck. And then off to the bar they would go. So this is what he was doing. And he was detailing cars in a car sales lot. He was washing windows on high-rise buildings, right? Those were the jobs that he was doing before he met my mother, right? So he had no skills. He had worked in a dental lab back in Denmark making dentures, but he had no skills. That he was doing no skill work, right, in Canada when he met my mother. And then they got married, and he decided he was going to go to school, become a mechanic, and she worked and took care of everything while he was in school. Right. So essentially she was the one who was, and they lived with my grandparents for a while, and they struck out on their own, managed to save up a down payment and struck out on their own and bought a house and all of the rest. Right. So, I mean, they came from very humble beginnings, very, very, very humble beginnings. And so when you look at what that, like the essentially, when they were, by the time they had me, which was 6 years into their marriage, right? By the time they had me, they owned a house, they owned a car, they had built a 2-car garage, and were starting to finish the basement of their house, right? So they were actually being able to invest in their property, in their life, all of these things, right? And my mom was able to stay home.
Yeah, but you see, according to feminist economics,
that was a much more capitalist system.
Yep.
Right? Back in the 1970s than we have now.
According
right?
to
And
feminists,
they did that
though,
all on one income.
according to
A
feminists,
blue-collar income. A blue-collar income of a guy who had only been a mechanic for 5 years.
according to feminists, though, that's not liberated. They would be liberated if they had to do all that for nothing, and they would be provided with an apartment unit, because that's what everybody would have. That's liberation. They're not liberated if they can have their own place and make their own choices. You see, they have to, in order to be liberated, they have to give up their free will and let the state make all of their decisions for them.
They have more than anybody else.
Yeah. So
and the only thing that has really increased from 1976, say, in Canada, right, to like in adjusted dollars, right? The only reason why people need 2 incomes rather than 1 to have the lifestyle my parents had, which was enough, right? It was enough to like get them ahead, enough to get them like,
right.
They were frugal, but they could manage and they could get ahead, right? The only thing that has actually, not food prices, not even housing prices, right? Not real estate prices. None of that in adjusted dollars has gone up. You know what's gone up? Taxes. Taxes.
That wouldn't be
Tripled.
surprising.
Taxes have tripled.
That's kind of the same.
So the tax burden on people has tripled, and now you need 2 incomes to maintain the same lifestyle that my parents had when only my dad was working.
And you see, that's liberation.
And probably also the size of the government.
Yeah, the size of the government.
Well, that's taxes, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you have
that's what taxes pay for the size of the government.
In general, the government grows even faster in taxes.
Yeah.
Because they use inflation to raise the money.
Well, and deficits and
that's what it is.
Yeah, they borrow it. They live in a way that if the rest of us lived that way, we'd be bankrupt. So there's your socialist critique of the economic order, all in hopes of creating more liberated society. There's the idea that you have to do all that same stuff, but you don't own anything. As feminist socialists, we must organize a practice which addresses both the struggle against patriarchy and the struggle against capitalism. The paper concludes, adding that both men and women share a need to overthrow capitalism, because men don't need control over the fruits of their labor at all. Well, the course description itself doesn't directly critique capitalism. Oh, that's useful. It appears that the school's economics department takes a uniquely anti-capitalist stance. The department's current promotional video features Tiani's colleague Anwar Shaikh, I guess, who also teaches economics, arguing that capitalism has innate tendencies that must be regulated, and questioning whether capitalism is tolerable. On one hand, capitalism produces this wealth. On the other hand, it erodes many things that we generally consider to be worth having, such as community. How does capitalism erode?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Such as place, not to mention
community.
jobs.
Community. You know what erodes community? Welfare.
Yeah.
Social services and social safety nets.
And
right?
tribalism. And tokenism.
No, but if you don't have to rely on your neighbors, there's no reason whatsoever to get to know them. So if you never, ever will ever have to walk to your neighbor's house and say, can I borrow a cup of sugar? Or, do you have 5 carrots that I can have? Or, if I shovel your walk, would you be willing to give my kid a ride to school because I don't have gas money? Right?
Yeah.
If you are never in the position to have to ask that of your neighbors, right? You have no reason to get to know them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if government takes care of all of that shit, right? and make sure that, oh, you always have gas money and you always have carrots and you always have a cup of sugar, right? Why would you bother? Why would you bother maintaining a relationship with your immediate neighbors? You wouldn't. You wouldn't, and people don't.
No, in fact,
you'd be more angry if they don't give you shit, because they're forced to give you shit anyway.
Yeah, well, I got to know neighbors that I'd never actually seen around the apartment complex when Hurricane Ike came up to Illinois and pushed the jet stream current to ground level, and it scoured southern Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, and the power went out all over the area. And everybody sort of came out of their apartments at that point, and their welfare doesn't take care of that. And there were people that lost refrigerators full of food and stuff like that. And then neighbors were looking after each other, but it was people who had never had a conversation. They lived next door, like literally next door to each other in the same building, never had a conversation. You know, having lived next to each other for 5 years, and not even hello, how are you doing? Good to see you. You know, or
we've lived here.
Anything.
We've lived in this neighborhood for like 5 or 6 years now, and I know my neighbor Avery across the street.
Yeah.
And I know my neighbor, don't know his name, but he's Greek. And we chat on a fairly regular basis, right? Next door, directly next door. And I don't know
the people up and down the street. Yeah.
I don't know anybody else. And this is completely different from the way my neighborhood was when I was a kid, where, you know, 50% of my direct friends, right, lived within 1 block of me. Like my friends personally, when I was a kid, my mother had, you know, women up and down the street. She would have them next door, 5 houses down, whatever, over for coffee every single morning, right? They'd bring their knitting, they'd bring their sewing, they'd bring their whatever, and sit there and sew and knit and drink coffee and gossip and all of that. And we would have these, I have pictures of snowmen that we built as a neighborhood that were twice as tall as the houses. They were like literally 20 giant balls of snow piled one on top of the other.
Yeah, see, my neighborhood was a little different. We didn't do snowmen like that. You ever see the snowmen in the Calvin and Hobbes comics that are like strangling?
Yeah.
Well, my neighborhood was almost entirely boys, so we would go to the park, and then there would be the
snowman that was hit by a car, and
there would be this snowman battle with snowmen holding machine guns and snowmen on the ground, and
but I mean, like,
snowmen's guts scattered all over the snow.
If you want to build a 25-foot snowman, right?
You need lots of people. That's a
team effort. You need lots of people to do that.
And a ladder.
And you're using the snow on everybody's lawns, right, up and down the street, and everybody is getting together and doing that. And so literally, like, that was what the neighbor, and we had neighborhood-wide games of hide and seek when I was like 12 years old, you know, in the sort of the gloaming, the twilight, just before sunset.
We used to do that.
You'd have 20, 30 kids, and you'd be counting, you know, okay, you're counting to 100, and everybody's yard was fair game.
We used to play a game that was called Guns. The game was just called Guns. We are going to play guns, and it wasn't cops and robbers. It wasn't cowboys and Indians. It was like, if you took cops and robbers and cowboys and Indians and mixed it together, and there was no good side and no bad side, that was Guns. And sometimes we would pick teams, and you know, you'd point the toy gun at the other person, and either it had a trigger and it made a noise, or you had to yell bang, and you would just assert that you had shot the other person, and they had to fall down and die for 10 seconds, and then after you were gone they could get back up. Or we used squirt guns. And
and then your mom was like, come home when the street lights come on.
And they didn't have an orange tip. Unless they were an orange gun.
Yeah, and essentially it was just like sort of And now when I go walk through the same neighborhood where I grew up, right, on the same street where my house was,
The kids aren't even playing outside, are they?
yeah, during the day, even in the playgrounds, and there's lots of playgrounds around there. There's actually because Alberta had a huge, massively booming economy in the 1990s, and they had more money than they knew what to do with. So they refurbished all these playgrounds. They made new parks. They did all of these massive public works projects and stuff like that, right? But you go there between, say 8 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock at night, there are no kids.
Yeah.
There's nobody. The entire place is a wasteland because everybody's at work or in daycare or in school. And there's no time, right? And this is one of the things that women used to do when they stayed at home was actually network within the community and maintain relationships between the people within the neighborhood, right?
And they knew each other's parenting styles, and they knew what to do if they saw each other's kids misbehaving too. Like the time
that's right.
My buddy Scott's mom gave me a swat on the butt one time for climbing the power line pole with the light post on the corner at the park by the basketball courts, and she didn't tell me, you could get killed doing that. She didn't tell me it was dangerous. She told me it was illegal to climb that because she knew if she told me it was dangerous, it wouldn't bother me. And if she told me, that I could fall or that there was something dangerous at the top, that wasn't going to bother me either because I could just not go all the way up to the top, right? But if she said it was illegal, I would be horrified and scandalized, and I would never climb it again. Any other kid, she would have said, "You're gonna fall off of there and die," or something like that. Not me. It's illegal. You can't do that. It's illegal. Oh my gosh, I did something illegal. Don't tell my mom. That kind of thing.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, I'm gonna finish the article because it's 11 and I gotta leave. So we're gonna save the next article for next week because it's along the same vein and it's interesting, but. So she says on one hand, capitalism produces wealth, and on the other, it erodes community, which is bull. She also says it erodes place, and not to mention jobs in the future for many people, especially younger people. Now, I'm thinking about this, and without capitalism, there wouldn't be jobs. Jobs are getting paid to do something for other people. That is capitalism. Jobs by nature are capitalism.
You know what destroys jobs for young people? The minimum wage.
Yeah, that is true. If you're going to have to pay somebody a certain amount to do something, you want a responsible adult. Now, at the end of the article is that Campus Reform reached out to Tiani for more information on her class and did not receive a response in time for publication. So apparently she didn't feel like answering them. I'm not going to explain myself to you. Look it up. Google it.
They're never going to talk to Campus Reform. Like, I'll talk to fucking Vice. I'll talk to Vice. I'll talk to David Pacman. I'll talk to Cenk Uygur. I'll talk to BuzzFeed, right? But she's never going to talk to Campus Reform.
Yeah.
So what is the lesson? Capitalism is love. Capitalism is life.
There we go.
Oh, hey. Shh. I have a question for Karen.
All right. Is it going to set off a long tirade? Because I might...
Probably,
no,
almost certainly.
Okay.
No. And I have to go pretty quick. So,
okay.
Brian is going to have roaming millennial.
Roaming millennial. Oh, I thought you were going to say millennial woes, and I was going to say, hell yeah, I'll be there for that. Roaming millennial. Yeah, I'll talk to her. Yeah, if he wants me on the fireside chat with him. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, on the Monday, I think.
Yeah, I can do that. What time?
I don't know. You'd have to ask him. Okay. I'm gonna.
I have somebody coming in to like look at my bathroom to refinish my tub Monday at some point. So.
Okay. Well, you'll have to arrange it with Brian. I gotta go.
I have a question for you before you go, Allison.
Oh God.
Yeah, just a quick one. Who's going to be on with? Is it tomorrow that Paula Wright's going on?
She seems to have bowed out because we can't get Peter Wright on.
Oh, because he's not coming on. Oh, so she won't talk. She won't talk to him online, because he refers to his writing and to other writing on gynocentrism. She wants to talk to him on air where she can say things and he can't link to something that proves her wrong. That's what that's about. And she doesn't want to come on and talk to me because I called Oliver bullshit, and I've started calling her a feminist, because she talks like one. So.
Well,
What are
the
you
thing is,
talking about?
she's gonna come on and talk to either me or Brian, not you or Paul Wright. So I don't know what the hell.
Peter
Oh,
Wright.
she actually challenged him to come on and talk. Actually, like she was gonna invite him on to Honey Badger Radio.
Wait, she can't fucking do that.
No, I know. I saw that and I thought, oh, I wonder if Allison has seen this. He basically told her to fuck off. I think he pretty much knows that she can't invite somebody on to Honey Badger Radio. But that's the situation. So I was wondering if she was still coming on tomorrow and who she was going to be talking to, because she's really pulled out all of the gynocentric stops, and she's basically burned her bridges with a lot of people just from things that she's been saying in her spat with me. And she started doing some freaky stuff, like she went back a month and started liking tweets from a conversation we had with Panina at the beginning of that dust up. Just
What are you
like
talking about?
Paula Wright, and she has jumped into several conversations of mine that she's not part of. She doesn't follow me, and I don't follow her. And there are not other people involved in the conversations that she's interacted with a lot, because when she started doing that, I looked. So she's actually got a wild hair up her ass at this point. Apparently, I'm living rent free in her head, as they like to say. And so I was wondering what was going on with. Yeah, I was wondering whether she was coming on and who was going to be on to talk to her, because it would be something to know about. But if she's not coming on and nobody's going to be talking to her on air, then there's no point.
Well,
yeah, there is no point. Like, I never said that we would. Why is she liking videos from Panina now?
Not videos, tweets, just tweets.
Tweets. Why would she do that?
Because she was trying to get under my skin.
Butt heart.
Yeah.
Oh, for fuck's sake! Why don't you just come on and defend your fucking case, lady?
Well,
just
because
lay out your evidence.
She doesn't have a
Debate.
case.
Act properly.
She keeps going on about how gynocentrism isn't real because it's natural.
what?
So
If it's natural,
it has to be real.
That means it's extra real.
Yeah, if it's natural, it's real.
I gotta go.
But yeah, so that's the situation. I wanted to know about that, but I gotta go as well.
I have a small story.
What's the small story?
So
Is this we're still broadcasting actually? Is it
someone
okay?
I grew up with. Yeah.
Okay.
Someone I grew up with posted on Instagram a picture that says, people who are sexually assaulted are 3 times more likely to experience depression, 4 times more likely to contemplate suicide, and 6 times more likely to experience post-traumatic stress. But none of that is gendered, and she herself, I've seen her post some pictures where she was at, I think she was once at a slut walk, and another time she was at a women's march, or she was talking about a slut march, maybe, walk, whatever. So she's clearly feminist, and she's always been talking about this in a positive light and shit. And so I went on there and keeping my cover, but also poking at men's rights, I said, if you're a woman and you get sexually assaulted / raped, no kitty, you'll probably be told don't wear skimpy outfits, even if it happened when you were wearing cargos and a hoodie, just to, let her know that it wasn't attacking women. And then the men's rights poke. If you're a guy and you experience those, you'll be told an erection means consent, and men can't be raped, women don't have penises. And then I said, yes, I have heard people say this stuff before. You'd be surprised what common it is.
Yeah, that is definitely...
Surprisingly, she hit like on it. And then she replied, sadly, I have too. Purity and rape culture is so 2O's toxic.
This is something that feminists and men's rights activists, there are a few things we can agree on. The feminist rape culture narrative isn't one of them, but that there is a culture of tolerance for sexual violence when it's done to men or when it's done by women, and that there is disagreement on the nature of sexual violence and what constitutes consent and whether consent is more important than refusal and so on. That's all stuff we can agree on. And I think common ground could be found for activism there.
Good night.
But I'm going to have to take off because I'm late for leaving for work to get there when I normally would want to get there. So good night all, and thanks everybody for listening, and thanks for the great commentary and conversation.
Good night.